my main deal is fly fishing. So, and I'm an Orvis guide also. I have a bed and breakfast on the Little Manatee River. Got some cards here. But I'm fourth generation in this area. I grew up pulling basically Little Manatee River south to the old ferry landing. And that, to this day, that's my main territory that I fish. So I pretty much know every little hole dip out on that flat. When I'm on the water, 70% of the day I'm on the pulling platform. Very seldom do I even put a trolling motor on my boat. And I love this time of year because, like I said, I've got a Hell's Bay, floats in 5 inches of water, runs in 5 inches of water. So I go back in through what we call Cylinder's Cut through the back, one little cockroach. A lot of times I'll get out and push my boat across that bar to get back in there and fish, because that gives me an hour and a half probably before any of these other guys can come in there that wants to either idle in or come in on a trolling motor. So that's basically briefly my history. But like I said, Redfish Landing Guide Service is my my operation. But I also do spinning tackle. I do bait when it's necessary. I'm going to go into some things here. What I'm going to tell you tonight, there's 3 lures that I would use. One of the 3 I would use for this tournament. If I was going to fish the tournament, I wasn't going to fish the tournament, but since the weekend at the Dream Inn is 2nd place, I may fish the tournament and try for 2nd place. Because then I've got my wife's Christmas present out of the way.
There you go.
So, all right, one of the things that I would use to begin with, and the first thing I'm going to tell you about fishing this tournament, no matter what lure you use, I carry a hook horn on my boat, okay? Whatever lure I'm going to use, I'm going to take the hooks and I'm going to pull it on my fingernail. That's a brand new lure right here. You see how it slides across? I'm going to sharpen this hook before I put it in the water. If it will not dig, when I put it on my fingernail, if it doesn't dig in, that hook's not sharp. That's going to cost you a fish. So I carry a hook horn on my boat, and everything, whether it's fly, whether it's lure, I'm going to check those hooks before I put it in the water, and I'm going to sharpen them before I start using that lure. Now this is what I'm using right now. If you can get up into shallow water, it looks like we've got a front coming in the end of next week, but it should warm up. If the weather stays the same and the front moves accordingly, it should come in about Wednesday, Thursday. So Saturday should be warming up. This time of year, I like the 3rd day, the 3rd morning after the coldest morning. Because the 1st morning is cold, the 2nd morning it's kind of cold, but the 2nd morning, that day, normally the sun comes out, the water gets warmed up. The 3rd morning is when it really starts warming up, those fish are back in the feed. So that's my favorite after a front. You're going to be pretty close to that, I think, on Saturday. So what I'm going to do is, if it's cloudy and overcast and cold, I want to work deeper water, deeper edges, because the fish are going to stay. Like this week, we had some cloudy days. I went out, we fished the deep holes in the river. I didn't even go into Little Cockroach because we had a negative tide. You know, it's aggravating to get in and out, and I knew the fish were in the river. So we stayed in the river and fished the holes, because without the sun coming out, without the water warming up, those fish are going to stay in the holes. But if the sun will come out, the water will warm up, first thing they're going to do, and these big fish, the first thing they're going to do is get up in that shallow water as quick as they can, because it's going to be 3 to 4 degrees warmer. One of the things you want to look for in the shallow water is, if you'll go across a lot, like in where I live, if you got Shell Point, then you go directly across to the south side of the river. That's where I live at. And next to me, right, I can see where he's hunting ducks. Right that area there, you got a shallow spot, light colored bottom, and then back in close to the mangroves, you're going to have a trough. Where you're going to have that anywhere in Little Cockroach. You're going to have that up in the kitchen. You go back in close to the mangroves, there's a trough that's going to follow those mangroves, and if you'll look, that trough is going to have darker bottom. It's going to be slightly muddy in there. And a darker bottom. And that is going to hold that temperature. So as soon as those fish can get across and get up in there, that's where they're going to go and hang up. And these big fish, you're looking for big trout, big redfish, they're going to get up in there and get up in around those troughs and get up in that warm water, because it's going to be anywhere from 3 to 5 degrees warmer than that shallower, lighter area. So this is one lure that I would use and I would work it slow. You got to remember, in the wintertime, these fish are not going to travel far. They're not going to feed on big baits. They're looking for, because this time of the year, they're feeding on glass minnows, small shrimp, small items. They don't want us to waste a lot of energy digesting stuff. I'm going to work this skitter walk, and I'm going to work it slow. If the tide's right where I can get up in these shallower areas, if you don't pull a boat, that's fine. If you have a trolling motor, or if you idle in there, what you want to do is go to a location where you're pretty sure they're going to be. And what I do is anchor off the back of my boat, because that gives me on the bow. But I've got a pulling platform on the back. So, I mean, a normal boat, if you don't have anything on the back, you can anchor off the bow. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and anchor up, and say each corner is maybe an island, or maybe an island and an oyster bar, or whatever. Okay, I'm going to anchor here. And I'm going to take this skitter walk, and I'm going to work slowly, and I'm going to start at about 4 o'clock. Bow being 12. Okay, so I'm going to start about 4 or 5 o'clock, and I'm going to start casting this skitter walk. And I'm going to work it all the way around, unless I have definite structure I want to cast to first. And I'm going to work this area all the way around back to this area here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my boat forward probably 30 foot. And I'm going to do that again. Or I'm going to move it down the shoreline. If I'm casting a mangrove shoreline, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to move down the shoreline 30 or 40 foot and work that area. If that's an area that I'm pretty sure there's some fish in, because I want to work it slow and I want to work every inch of it. And if you get one in there, make sure you work it good. Because there's not going to be laying in a school. You know, our redfish up here, on these, back in here, they're not in schools. But you'll get in there, and there's pockets where there may be 20 redfish in there, but they're each in a different hole. But this is going to be my first choice, all right? If it's a dark, cold day, where they're more than likely going to be, and we're not going to get any sun, it's going to be colder water, I'm going to go with the Aqua Dream spoon.
Yeah, boy.
The reason I'm going to do this, okay, what I want bigger fish. So I'm going to go with the Aqua Dream spoon. I can work it as slow or as fast as I want to. And what I'm going to do is in short, with this, I normally work it in, I just make a short twitch. I don't want that thing to move very far. I only want this spoon to move like this. So I'm going to do a short twitch. So I want it to come up and then flutter back. Come up and then flutter back. But I can work 6 inches or I can work 6 foot with this one lure. Again, I want to check the hook point. If it's not sharp, I want to sharpen it. Now, one thing that I would do to this lure, which I would do to all 5 so they're all the same, and I believe this is allowed, stop me if it's not, okay? I'm going to put, these Aqua Dream comes with a split ring on the front, okay? I'm going to put a swivel on the front of that.
Yeah, you're good, as long as every one of them has that
As long
swivel.
as every one of them is figured the same. Every one of them is going to have, because all of my spoons have a swivel on them. Okay, and listen, with your split ring, with your swivel, don't go cheap. Please don't go cheap, because you're out there looking for big fish. So, you know, buy a Spro swivel or a Tsunami. Both of those are pretty healthy, especially Spro. And you want to get as small a swivel as you can get away with. You don't want any bigger than you need.
What size is that?
They make a small, this right here, this little swivel is 50 pounds.
Right.
So you're not going to need any more than that. Less is more. But I can use this one spoon and I can work extremely shallow water in the back, or I can work the holes in the river, which most of them that I'm going to work is, 6 foot on the edges. So you can work those deeper outer edges, because those big trout are going to be out on the deeper edge if that sun's not shining. They're going to be laying on that deeper edge of the flat, out around the 6 foot markers out in there, or in the deeper holes in the river. My third choice is going to be probably not this color. I would go with more of a greenback looking color. My third choice would be a Mirrodine, or a MirrLure type lure. Again, I like a Mirrodine because it doesn't go very deep. But if you're going to be fishing deeper holes in the river, you might want to go with a regular MirrLure. Even that, like a 52M, I'm going to go with a, with a greenback silver-sided. But I use a Mirrodine. Now, one thing I do, which you can do it in a tournament if I understand right, but if you're going to fish shallow water, I fish it like it is. If I want to fish deeper water and shallow water, I put a split shot about 6 inches above it, which brings it down. You can work a little bit deeper with it, because otherwise you're fishing, it's not going to go below 2 foot. But this Mirrodine is excellent.
Yeah,
It's hard to beat this lure.
If you put a split shot on it, it's a split shot on all 5
On
of
all
them.
5 of them, as long as you use the same on each
It's
one.
the same thing,
Do you use
whatever.
that size?
I use this size.
Okay.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I catch redfish, snook, anything out there that swims, even puffers. But the thing is, these 3 lures I showed you, you won't catch very many puffers. You won't catch very many snakefish. So you'll eliminate a lot of that stuff. Now, the reason I wouldn't use soft baits is because you only got 5. Okay, there's some big ladyfish in the river right now. If you catch a dozen, 20 ladyfish, which is not hard to do, you're going to lose a few plastic lures. And one thing I want you to do also is when you catch a fish, make sure you check that leader. Make sure it's not frayed. Hey, mono's cheap, fluorocarbon's cheap, compared to a $500, gift card or a weekend. But if it's frayed, clip that thing, retie it. Because that can cost you, especially you're looking for big fish. You're not looking for just quantities, you're looking for big fish. So if you've got nicks in that leader, there's a very possibility that it can break it off. It doesn't take very many nicks to take 30 pound down to 10. Very few. This is one thing that I got into Keys, and I loved it so much I went back and bought. He only had 1 more, and I ordered 2 more. I keep these in my boat. I keep them on my vest when I'm fly fishing up north or wherever, and I keep them in I have a fish house out on the dock that has nothing but my fishing equipment. I keep it in there. This is a little snipper. They've got them at, I know Mahoney has them. They also have them with a light on them. But this, you can close it back and it stays closed. You open it up. This thing cuts braided line like nothing I've ever seen. Okay, you don't have to hold the braided line and fold it over and hold it into the blade and cut it 3 times. You put this up there, you can just hold it up there and clip that, and it will cut that braided line. I use this a lot. I've gotten a lot of use out of this, and like I said, I bought 3 or 4 of them when I found it. Also, it's got a built-in landing. On my boat, on my GPS, on the bottom of my GPS, this thing is rounded. So when I'm sitting there, I sit down in my console, I pull this thing out, flip anything up when I'm tying or retying or whatever. That's a handy tool. They run $12, $12.95. Excellent tool. Any questions? If you have any questions just about the tournament or anything, just.
Well, you
Yes, sir.
mentioned the leader. I mean, everybody downsizes for the winter. What are you using right now, test-wise?
Right now, I'm using 20 mostly, some 30. I use fluorocarbon. I use O'Hero fluorocarbon. For my fly tip fishing, I tie my own leaders. So I put those together out of O'Hero fluorocarbon. My spinning rods all have O'Hero fluorocarbon on them, simply because I think that is more invisible than anything else that I've ever used. And it really works well for me and holds up well. It's very abrasive resistant, so it's tough stuff.
How long is your leader, John?
It's according to what I'm throwing, but normally 2 foot. For a spinning rod's a 2 foot leader. Now, my fly rod, I've got
9.
a 9. As a matter of fact, this time of year, we get gin clear water, and I go back in there to, go back in a little cockroach. Sometimes I'll go down to 12-pound test in a 12, 14 foot leader, because these redfish are spooky. So if I'm back in their shallow water, you know, when they're gin clear and they're nervous, I'm gonna have to go down to that in order to catch them. Because I've actually done that with a guy that came over and fished with me, fished the backwater, and that was one of those days when I had to get out and push my boat across Seller's Cut to get back in there. But once we got back in there, we had the reds all to ourselves. There's nobody else there. But it was gin clear water, and he had 25-pound test, and he cast a fly out there, and they'd come look at it and turn away. And they did that twice. And we went down to 12-pound test, and we started catching. But for these big fish, what you're looking for, I would say, you know, 20 or 30-pound test. And it's according to where you're at. If you're around structure, I wouldn't do any less than 30. You know, and then if you're fishing shallower water and you're going to see them, then you'll see if they're turning away. Then you need to go down, you know, then drop it down a little bit. But you know, I'd be afraid if I'm looking for big fish, I don't want to go below 30. Yes, sir.
I've got 2 kids, 8 to 10 years old, haven't really fished much saltwater at all.
All right.
2 questions. I don't have a boat.
Right.
I need someplace I can take them where they can maybe do some wade fishing.
Yeah.
And I need a lure that would be fairly easy for them to use.
Okay, I'll be going over the lure in just a few minutes. Okay. Simmons Park is hard to beat. Okay. Your kids don't mind if it's not really that cold.
They're Yankees. They're
Yeah, so you know, so what I used to do, we used to do this as kids. On that north arm, you go in, you turn right, go out that north arm where that whole channel flows out. All right, we'd get a float, we'd put our stuff on it and swim that canal and get on the north side and then walk the flat. All right, that's what we would do there. But I'm going to give you a couple of things that you can just go up to these holes and fish them. Another place is Emerson Point in Palmetto. Okay, you go down to Palmetto, you go out, I believe it's 10th Street, go all the way to the end of it. It's called Emerson Point.
Okay.
It's on the river, on the Big Manatee. There's deep water there, so you can fish that edge just from the shoreline. And then there's shallow flats in there that you can wade those flats.
Okay.
Okay, you wade those flats. With kids, you probably wouldn't want to do it, wouldn't want to throw like a skitter walk or something. With kids, what you'll want to do is there's a jig I'm going to show you that I'm using now, or you'll want to throw just put a split shot and a circle hook, and then hook either a DOA shrimp through the nose,
Okay.
or a shad pattern, like a bass assassin or just a shad with a paddle tail.
Okay.
And let them cast that out, and as they're wading, you can work the flats, and those 2 things will be very productive on the flat.
Okay.
Without having to use top water, and you've only got a single hook. Pinch the barb. I don't always do it on my spinning tackle, but every fly, when I tie my flies, I pinch the barb down before I even tie the fly.
Okay.
As long as they keep that slack out, as long as they keep a bend in that rod tip, that fish is not going to throw the hook. But with circle hooks and with kids, if I'm fishing kids, whatever they're throwing, the barbs are going to be pinched down.
All right.
Okay? Because you can just pop that baby back out and keep fishing for the day as opposed to going somewhere. I mean, I don't know if y'all are familiar, maybe we do that sometimes, show people how to take a hook out. I keep, a little bit heavier line to where I can put it underneath that hook. You just press the hook down on the arm, pop it out, it'll come right out. It'll back out without hurting anybody. But that's a story for another day, I guess. So, pinch it, but with kids, pinch the barbs. Pinch the barbs. Anything else? Okay, well those are basically the 3 types of lures that I would use if I'm fishing this tournament. Now you guys have, I get shallow, but those guys are going to be in there after the tide comes up. they're all gonna be up in that shallow water if y'all can get to them.
Anybody know what the tide's supposed to be that Saturday?
About 11 or 12 high.
11 o'clock, 12 o'clock's gonna be high
Yeah,
tide.
it's a small one, then it gets,
It's like a neap tide, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, where it
Then
comes
goes-
up and then it kind of levels off and then it's
and
gonna come up
then
again.
you got a big one later on.
Yeah,
that
so
evening.
see, there's gonna be water on the flats probably. Should be a fair amount of water on the flats. I haven't seen the wind, but I don't think the wind's gonna be too bad. You know, last week we had that wind, we had a negative tide, and man, that wind blew the water out of there. That was one day I was gonna go back in Little Cockroach, I didn't go, because there was no water. And I knew there was not gonna be any water, because when we get that northeast wind,
Yeah.
and a north wind, and we got that tide, it's gonna hold it back even from coming in.
Yep.
So, but that's a story for another day too. I do a tide seminar also for winter tides, but, any more questions about the tournament or techniques for the tournament or?
If it's gonna be an incoming tide, are those fish gonna be pushed further back up, or are they gonna be?
There, as soon as they can get, if we got that cold weather, if it's gonna cool down like Wednesday, Thursday, okay, as soon as they can get back up close to the mangroves where you got that dark bottom, that's where they're going. They're gonna go back up and get up in there. That side, you know, where you're doing ducks, okay, that north, east of there, they're gonna be up in there on that side. Cause you, also, you wanna look for a shoreline if you can, that has a southern exposure, if it's possible. Whether you're in the river, or, you know, whether you're out on the bayside or on the flats. Because that is gonna have the sun on it all morning, so that's gonna be the first thing that's gonna warm up. So you want a shoreline that's had some sun on it that morning, because that's what's gonna bring them in. That'll make a lot of difference. Anything else?
I got a question about equipment.
Okay?
Now a good time?
Okay, I'll tell you what, just hold that one just 1 minute.
Sure.
I'm gonna go over two things right now. If I've got a meat charter, which is what we call them, somebody wants to go out and catch fish and keep them, which honestly doesn't happen a lot on my skip. But right now, very seldom do I use bait. Okay, I will use it some this time of year. But if I've got a meat charter, there's two things that I'm using right now if I want to put fish in the boat. I'm not looking for trout over 20 inches, because you can only keep one. Okay, I'm not looking for a 36-inch redfish, because you can't keep it. These guys they're looking for a small rat reds, they're looking for little trout they can keep, they're looking for black drum, they're looking for sheep's head, they're looking for mangrove snapper. My key lure right now is a pompano jig. The reason I use a pompano
I'm sorry, I'm too old to see that from where you are. Anybody else have?
We can pass this
Okay,
around
good.
because
Until he
it
gets
does
in front
have,
of the door.
now this is a tsunami jig
There we go. Here.
made by Tsunami. You want a good one. That hook, because it'll have a good hook. Okay, that's got plastic on the hook, so I'm not worried about passing it around. What I'm gonna do with that jig, this is an excellent thing. When I have kids on the boat, this is something I'm gonna throw. Because I put them up there and they just throw this jig and keep working it. I have people come on my boat, well, my kid can't cast very well. He gets bored, so, you know, we're probably just gonna have to bait fish, you're gonna have to anchor up. No, that's not what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put a rod in his hand and a lure on here that he can throw. I'm gonna pinch that barb down, and he's gonna be casting that lure and working it all day long. He's got to have something to do. These kids are about they're used to video games. Immediate gratification. They want something going on. So if you can keep them busy, and if I'm throwing this pompano jig, if I've got kids, and this week I did this on my charter. What I'll do is I'll buy small shrimp. I don't need big shrimp. So I'll buy 5 dozen small shrimp. They're cheap. And what I'll do is I'll break those shrimp up, usually in half, and tip this jig with those shrimp. And I can work these holes in the river, work the oyster bars, work the deep holes, work the seawalls. I'm going to catch redfish. I'm going to catch ladyfish, naturally, but I'm going to catch trout. I'm going to catch snook. I'm going to catch mangrove snapper. I'm going to catch sheephead. I'm going to catch black drum. I caught all of those last Friday in half-day charter. didn't get on the water till 8:30, and we were at the house by noon. And the last stop, if y'all figure out where I'm at, you might figure this out. But I took him up the river. We caught some black drum on this. The last stop was right at my house. And Rick Lyles went by me, as a matter of fact. He was fishing the same area. For the last stop, he caught 8 snook and 3 redfish. Anchored up in one spot, doing just like I told you. Anchored up off the back, casting a mangrove shoreline. It was a point that drops off into a hole. This tip was shrimp, and he caught 8 snook and 3 redfish in 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
You just hop that along the bottom?
Hop it on the bottom. If you're not bumping the bottom, if you don't hang it up once in a while, you're working it too fast. Now, if I don't want to waste time, if I don't want to bother with shrimp, if I'm out scouting by myself, I'm going to use, this is something Bass Assassin just came out with, but other lure makers make them. This is something I had suggested to them because I had to take the Bass Assassin and I would clip it off and use the last 2 inches to put on these jigs. Well, they sent me a crappie lure. It's got the paddle tail, just like the Bass Assassin, and I'm going to hook it on this jig. So if I want to use completely artificial, this is what I'm going to use. And I use this pearl white, and I use a root beer. Those are the main 2 colors I'm using. I don't have any other plastic baits, whether I'm summertime, when I am using plastic lures in early fall. The 2 colors I use is like a clear with a glitter, which is, they call it a pinfish, or a white, or I'm going to use a root beer color. Those are the only 2 colors I need. Yes, sir.
What dictates what color you use?
The area that I'm targeting and the species I'm targeting. If I want to catch more trout and snook, I'm usually going to be throwing the white. If I want to catch mainly redfish and possibly snook and trout, I'm going to use a root beer. The redfish seem to like that root beer better. It keys in, because they feed on those tiger chubs. And they're more of a brown color, especially in the wintertime, because you're not going to see greenbacks out there, So tiger chubs, and that's what we call, when I was growing up, that's what we called snook candy back then, was tiger chubs. I don't know if y'all are familiar with them. They got a pointed nose, and they're striped on the side, and they're long and thin, and you find them around oyster bars and mangroves and that kind of stuff. But if you can catch some of those, man, snook will eat them up. So
Is
will
that
redfish.
mud minnows? We call
What's that? Mud minnows. They're a type of mud minnow for this area. Yes. Where are you from?
Originally from Pennsylvania.
Okay. So up on the shore up there, you'd use mud minnows, right?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
we catch them down here. I think they're the same species and
Yeah.
do real well for flounder.
You're right. Right. Yeah, flounder eat them up. And then now we have another chub, which is bigger, and it's got a big flat tail, and sometimes the tail is like a bluish color. That's a different species. This one I'm talking about is a narrow, the head looks like a snook. It comes to a pointed nose like this, and you'll see bars on this side.
Right.
That's why you'll see a lot of flies that we guys tie for these areas. Most of us tie our own flies because we want it specific to what we're targeting in our area. But a lot of my flies, you'll see them, they're barred on the side. And they're brown and root beer colors, and because that's what they imitate is this bait fish here. The other thing I'm throwing right now, if I'm going to go out and if I'm going to get up on the flat, or if I'm going to work a shallower edge, I'm going to throw a popping cork and a DOA shrimp. This is how I use my DOA shrimp. Well, can everybody see that? Mm-hmm. That's how I, what's that?
Hook through the head.
Hook through the head. Okay? When I pop this, the shrimp's going to come up, and he's going to settle back down. This is a great color. This thing in the water is unbelievable. But I mainly use this color and white are the two, what they call the day glow, are the main two that I use. But when you pop this thing and it jumps up and then floats back down, they're normally going to hit it on the fall. So just be prepared. And all of my plastics, and I use circle hooks. And the main thing I see people do, especially bass fishermen, I have them come on my boat with circle hooks, is they miss so many fish because as soon as they get a bite, they want to set the hook. Okay, if you can train yourself, I had to do this when I first started fishing circle hooks. Man, I'd set the hook and just pull it out of their mouth every time. But I finally learned to just keep the rod pointed at the fish and crank that reel twice. I'll ease it up till I feel that fish, kind of let him take up the slack, and then I'll crank that reel twice, and then I'll put a bend in the rod. You want to keep a bend in that rod tip. Anything else? Any other questions?
That DOA, do they sell it without a hook? I mean,
Yeah, they
most
do.
time
I don't buy them because I don't like their hook. I don't like the. One thing I do with the circle hook is, and I do it on my grubs too, is because, okay, you got the circle hook here. Okay, if you've got their hook in this shrimp, I'm going to take this off real quick. If you've got their hook in this shrimp, it's buried in here. Okay? And on jigs too, I do the same thing. I don't bury my jig hook back in the body. Because what happens is, when they take this, if they take this shrimp, what's going to happen is, okay, it goes into this fish's mouth. Which way is the hook pointing? It's pointing down his throat. So you had to pull, okay, you had to turn that hook around in order for it to hook the fish. All right? If you put a circle hook on there, what happens is, if he takes it from behind, that hook is facing the outside of his mouth. If he takes it from the head, what's that hook do? It turns. That hook lays down beside him. So when you pull, this hook is still facing out. So whether it's a grub or whether it's a DOA shrimp, that's the way I use plastics on. On my plastics, I put a circle hook, but even if I'm using a jig, I'll still hook them the same way. Leave it back off, it doesn't matter. Leave it back off that head and hook it, because that hook will still turn. When they take it, that hook will turn, and it'll always be facing to hook that fish. Plus also, if you'll take a grub, like a bass sass, I use those because that's why I refer to them. But if you'll take a small mission jig and hook that through the nose, like I'm telling you, and if you'll just lay that out and look at it, it looks like this fish is trying to eat a smaller fish. And trust me, when you're fishing for bigger fish, that keys in on them. Because they think this, because they see that this, I mean, they don't think everything through, I don't mean that, but still, it keys that instinct that this fish is trying to eat this fish, so he's not paying any attention to me, so he's an easy meal. Yes, sir.
Kevin, what size circle hooks do you use?
What's that?
What size circle hooks?
Mostly, number one, no bigger than a 1/0. You know, unless I'm throwing big bait for, I mean, if I want to catch a huge red or a shark or a tarpon, you know, then I'll go up to an 8 or a 12, according to what I'm after. But most, especially with these plastics, I'm not going to go any bigger than a 1/0, but normally number one. Real quick on your reel, you say you're looking for something in 2000
Yeah,
series?
2000 series reel to replace one that has gone south.
Well, there's quite a few out there. Now, the one I use is Shimano. I got the new carbon ones.
Okay.
You know, they're a little bit of money, but they're worth it.
See,
Those
two-
things
two
I
of
bought.
those.
I bought the. I don't know if I can say this on video. You know, I mean, the guy that works on my reels told me not to do it, and I did it anyway. I bought the Penn Battle reels
Right.
because as a guide, when I buy something, I got to buy two of them. Okay, because a lot of times I have two people. I don't fish more than two people on my boat. So I went and bought two pin battles. Took them out the first day, a kid flips the bail wrong, the bail kicker breaks. So I called the guy that does my reels, and he said, John, why'd you buy them? He said, I told you not to. I said, well, you know, they were reasonable and yada, yada, yada. But honestly, they were cheap. So that's what I got. But all of my reels, so I immediately went back to all my reels are Shimano.
But the Shimano's the
I
manufacturer,
use a Shimano Stratic is the one I
the
use.
Stratic.
Yeah.
Is there a,
You got the Stratic, and then you got the Sustain is the next one up. Okay. And then, of course, the Stella is $800.
Rolls Royce.
But yeah. But the Stratic, I have had my Stratic. I've got the 2500 I just replaced. They were 4 years old on a guide boat. So this is, I mean, these things, you know, I don't baby this stuff. You know, and I'm out there, and I'm talking about a 2500 reel that has caught 4-foot bonnethead sharks. So, you know, this stuff is used. I've got, on my skiff for spinning reels, I keep a 2500 and I keep a 4000. My 4000s are Shimano Stratics. Now, I did order, if somebody's looking for a higher end reel, I can let you know in the future. I was contacted by a company, it's called Fortitude. It's a company, the guy that designed this has set IGFA records, and he's an engineer in titanium. So he came out with some titanium reels made by Fortitude. The retail price on them is $400.
Lord,
Okay, but that's cheap. But they're equivalent to a Stella or a Van Staal. So I'm looking at these as a guide. I've got a 6000 coming, which will be for tarpon and sharks, and I hope it comes in pretty soon because I want to take it up and test it out at the power plant on cobia and sharks. And then I've got a 4000. They don't make anything smaller than a 4000, but they've got sealed drag systems, sealed mechanisms, and they have a lifetime warranty. Okay, so how many reels do you have to go through before you get $400 in? You know, if
Three or
you buy a
four.
battle, you're going to go through about 5 in 2
What's
years.
it called? What's it called?
It's called Fortitude.
Fortitude.
The only one that handles them, and they handle them because I asked them to, in this area, on the whole Gulf Coast of Florida, is Tampa Fishing Outfitters. They only have limited dealers that they deal with. And the only reason I get them, the only reason I know about them, they sent me an email to get into their program. So I had Tampa Fishing Outfitters ordered 2 for me, and then you ordered 3 more to have in your shop. But even from the time we ordered, it takes 8 weeks to get in there. But I'll let you guys know how those work out, because when I get them, I'm gonna put them through the test. And like I said, you know, it's all according to what you want to put into your gear. You know, you can go out, you can get, you know, Garcia, the old 300 type, I guess what's called 302 now or something, but anyway, the Mitchell 300, you know, that's a good reel. You know, when I was a kid, that's what we had, and God, I caught 20-pound snook on the flats down Fort Manatee.
That's always the
I
real
can't tell
to
you, I
have.
can't tell you how many, you know.
They're great reels.
Yeah. But
Just
it's,
reintroduce them.
yeah. So, you know, that's I'll tell you one thing that's a deal right now. I don't know if he's let it out, but Rick Lyles came up with a rod. It's called a canine rod. Okay? I've got some from him, and I love it. But now I understand his company closed the doors. Okay? But now he's got some of those rods. If you have if you see Rick, ask him about it. I have them on my, and what I love about them, it's the same rod. I'm fishing the same rod on my 2500 that I am on my 4000. The same exact rod, and I can throw lures on both. They'll handle these, you know, these big skidder walks. And they'll throw this light pompano. I put it on 2500, they'll throw this light pompano deal. And the only difference I have on those reels is my 4000, I've got 20-pound braid. And on my 2500, I use 12 or 14-pound braid.
These 42 reels are pretty cool looking. The
Yeah.
3000, they have actually the 4000 is $399,
Yeah.
5000 is $49.99, and the 6000 is $499. So $400, $450, or $500. But they're pretty cool looking though.
Well, and
Which
I'm
one
looking at
of
it from a guy,
Or two.
you know, because I don't want a reel that I've got to replace every year, or I don't want a reel out in battle where I get out there and it's not working. You know, my gear's got to work. I can't get out there and have somebody make 2 casts and my stuff fall apart.
Mhm.
So that's why I have, you know, I mean, if you get on my skiff, it's all high end. You know, I'm an Orvis guy, fly rod, it's the best, you know, this top end fly rods if you get on my boat. But they all have, you know, they have 25-year warranties and all that, so.
What kind of rods are you throwing? Helios or you throwing?
I'm throwing Helios 2.
Helios 2?
Yeah, I've got 2 of them. I've got an 8-weight and a 12-weight Helios 2. And my 6 and my 10 is the Helios. But I upgraded and if anybody, you know, if anybody has questions about fly fishing, that's what I do. I'm a master instructor with the Federation, and I'm an Orvis guide, and fly fishing is my passion. I love it. If you need a line that you want to throw that use it basically all around, the new Grand Slam that SA came out with is unbelievable. I get clients on my boat that's casting, they can cast maybe 30, 40 foot. I've got them casting 50, 60 foot with that line.
Why is that? Is it because
What's
it's
that?
it's a front-loaded fly line?
Well, it's a forward taper, but the trick with that is, and actually I fished with a guy in Tennessee, in Georgia for stripers that did the same thing, but he did it manually. The trick with this is, it's got a normal 40-foot head. You got the front taper,
Right.
which is basically a bonefish or redfish taper, but mostly a bonefish taper, okay? And then you got the belly, and then you got the back taper. Okay, the back taper drops off pretty fast, and the running line is extremely thin.
Oh, okay. So
It's amazing how
no friction in the guide.
there's no, once you get that head out, but the problem is, you can cast, I mean, I had a guy, one of the other instructors, I put him on my boat the first day, and he picked that thing up, and he was making 70, 80-foot casts back in a little
That's an
cockroach.
SA line?
It's an SA
What's
line.
it called?
Brouchard Grand Slam line.
Grand Slam?
But as soon as I cast that first line, I ordered another 8, I ordered a 10-weight, and I ordered a 12-weight. But you would be amazed, it'll increase your...
Scientific Anglers Grand Slam.
Grand Slam.
Okay.
It'll increase your
I'm sending
cast-
myself an email.
It'll increase your casting ability by 20 foot, easy. But the trick is, you don't, and it has a color change. Where the head goes to the running line,
Yeah.
there's a color change.
Oh, you know what? I had that on my 5-weight.
And then, so now this was only made down to 7-weight.
Oh, okay. But
This one is.
I have an SA
Yeah.
line that changes
Yeah.
colors. You just
Yeah,
throw it out.
yeah, and the trick is that thin running line, but you don't carry, once you get that head out, the problem I see with most guys is, they want to get 50-foot of line out that they're casting, false casting. You don't do that. Because once you get past that, into that running line, it won't carry the rest of it.
You just shoot it.
So, yeah, so you get to the end of that head and just shoot it. And man, you can come up here, you know, I'm fishing the mangroves and I'm just making one back cast and boom, putting it back out there 50 foot. With one back cast.
Scientific Anglers Grand Slam.
Grand Slam. I love it. I bought more as soon as I got it, and I sold, I don't know how much of it to people that I fish and I know. But, any other questions? Boating, fly fishing, fishing, ruskin?
Where would you go if you're gonna fish the tournament? This won't make it to the website on time,
Okay.
so anyway. Just that I point that out.
You know, there's a lot of excellent areas. The kitchen will be great. You know, it's of course what the wind's doing.
How about in front of your house?
But with me, if I was gonna go, I would be in Little Cockroach.
It's in
Or
front of his house.
in the river
Pardon
down
me?
there. Or in the river down
It's in front of his house.
In front of his house.
There's
yeah.
Bob and Weave steel shop coming.
What about the Tarpon
That's
Key
right.
area?
What's
the
that?
ducks?
What about the Tarpon Key area?
there. Tarpon Key.
St. Pete.
Fort DeSoto.
Oh, I don't go there.
All right.
I don't go off, you know where the 6-foot markers are?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. for
That's
me.
it?
That's as far west as I go. So, you know.
You're on your
the
own at
guys call
Tarpon
me,
Key.
You know, when those black drum come in over there, they call me and, hey, John, they're in here. Nobody's on them yet. I don't go. I don't go over there. The only time I go past that, I'll go down in the spring when tarpon are moving out. I'll go down and I'll I'll go, but I've gotta have an easterly or southeasterly wind, and I've gotta know it's gonna be that all day. Because I can't go around Port Manatee Island, I can't go around that spoil island with a north wind or a strong west wind. Because of my Hills Bay, it'll beat my clients to death. It'll take it, but it's not worth the ride. But if it's gonna be a nice day, then I'll go down and I'll pull the outside of Joe's Island, you're talking about catching tarpon, and nobody fishes. That outside bar, Joe's Island, I'll fish, get the outside of it, and I'm gonna pull where it's about 4 or 5 foot deep, and I'm gonna pull all the way towards the Skyway. And then I'm gonna go through and go to Rattlesnake Key and do the same thing.
Yeah, that's not
All the
making
way
it
down
on the
to
web either, so.
Yeah, so, you know, but it doesn't, I mean, people know all this stuff, but they don't.
No, they don't, man.
They don't do it. But no, I'd be working cockroach because that's where I know.
Gotcha.
A good area is gonna be, according to what the weather's doing, but a good area is gonna be inside, you come inside Little Harbor, go to the left, up in that L, down that side, because you wanna get, not necessarily right here where you turn, but up in there, because that's gonna have the sun all morning. And I've gone in there and worked that, and poled down that, it's muddy, it's hard to pole, but if you know, if you got a trolling motor, but you can go up, ease up into that corner, just get just close enough to cast up in there and then anchor where it makes that corner and work that hole. Try to stay up as shallow as you can. I've taken people down in there and had redfish laying up. I thought it was, I didn't know what it was, but anyway, I thought it was big mullet at first, but it was too big to be mullet. And they were laying up under the edge of the mangroves, and it was redfish like this. They were just floating right up in that corner. But you know, look for these areas that's got no wind and had the sun all morning. That's where these big fish are going to be. Anything else?